Welcome back to our channel. Today I'm going to explain a movie called Klaus. Let's go on this journey. In the film, a boy Jesper is the worst student at the Postal Academy. So, they stationed him on a frozen island above the Arctic Circle, where the feuding locals hardly exchange words. And the journey will be in his name if he can prove them. The film starts with a letter being delivered to the Royal Postal Academy. It is a summons for one of the students, Jesper Johansson, whose father has enrolled him in the academy to teach him responsibility. However, Jesper is a selfish brat who prefers to spend his time lounging in his luxurious tent. We learn that Jesper's overall performance is deemed abysmal by the drill sergeant. He's completely careless with delivering mail. His father deduces that Jesper is doing this intentionally because he wants a different punishment. So, he announces that Jesper is officially a postman and will be stationed in a small town named Smeerensburg. He also gives him an ultimatum: deliver 6,000 letters in a year, or he will be cut off from the family. Then, Jesper arrives in Smeerensburg and is greeted by the ferryman Mogens, who tells him to ring the bell in the town square. This causes a huge brawl between the townspeople, known as the Battle Bell. Additionally, the town is divided into two clans, the Krums and the Ellingboes, who have been fighting with each other for many years. After seeing that, Jesper manages to hide in a nearby schoolhouse. There he meets the school teacher, Miss Alva. Besides, parents refuse to send their children to school, so the woman has been forced to sell fish to save up her earnings to leave Smeerensburg. After that, the ferryman leads Jesper to his new home, a dilapidated post office, where a boy throws a snowball at him, calling him a loser. The next morning, Jesper goes out to collect letters but finds none. He tries to ask the townspeople for their mail, but they're too busy fighting and pranking each other. At one house, Jesper finds a young boy's drawing and offers to mail it back, but the boy's father chases him off. 2 weeks later, Jesper tries one more house, but it is empty. He eventually finds Mr. Klaus, who lives far out of town. In the basement, he finds hundreds of handmade toys. Klaus returns and Jesper runs off, dropping his satchel. The boy's drawing from earlier falls out, and Klaus picks it up, curious. Furthermore, Jesper attempts to leave Smeerensburg, but Klaus stops him and watches the boy unwrap a present. The next morning, Jesper saw children out of his house. He gives out paper and pencils to children to make their letters sound sad. Then, he makes a chart on the wall to keep track of how many letters he delivers. Jesper returns to Klaus' home, where the woodsman is hanging birdhouses in the trees. He shows him letters and convinces him to donate the toys in his basement. Klaus agrees. Later, the boy and girl from opposite clans are separated by their parents and brought to the clan leaders. They are told that the clans are not meant to mingle, and the reason they keep fighting is due to tradition. The kids promise to not do it again. However, Mr. Klaus comes down the chimney at night and leaves toys behind, but Jesper is the one delivering them. At one of the houses, Jesper realizes the boy who threw a snowball at him. At the post office, Margot tries to ask for a present, but Jesper ignores her. A few of the children tell him they don't know how to write, so he sends them to Alva. However, Alva is not happy about this new development because she's so close to being able to leave. The good sign is, the children insist on learning how to write their names, so she starts taking money out of her savings for school supplies. Meanwhile, the number of presents has increased so drastically that Jesper's horse can't pull the wagon anymore. Klaus gets the idea to wrangle up some nearby reindeer, which makes the wagon go faster. The following morning, Jesper warns the children that if they are naughty, they won't get presents. Later, the children start doing good deeds to stay in Klaus' good graces, inspiring the adults to do the same. Alva is able to stop selling fish and start teaching, leading to a happier town. However, Mr. Ellingboe and Mrs. Krum are unhappy with the changes and decide Jesper must be stopped. After hearing that, Klaus is happy that the town is doing better. He remarks, "A truly selfless act always sparks another." However, Jesper isn't convinced. He believes everyone is always out to get something. Mr. Ellingboe and Mrs. Krum attempt to ambush them, but Klaus is able to maneuver them safely away. The wagon loses its wheels in the process, and they end up ramping over a cliffside. We saw that a boy looks out his window and sees the sleigh and reindeer airborne. The next morning, a rumor spread that Klaus has flown reindeer. This makes him laugh for the first time. After that, Mr. Ellingboe and Mrs. Krum meet in the town square to discuss the dwindling numbers of their clans due to Klaus. They agree to a temporary truce, but it is broken when someone accidentally rings the battle bell. Then, Jesper notices that they are running low on toys. He gets the idea to make a huge delivery on Christmas, and Klaus can make more. Klaus claims he doesn't do so anymore, but Jesper keeps insisting that they can turn Klaus' home into a workshop. In his excitement, he accidentally finds a decorative shelf of the woodsman. Klaus angrily orders Jesper to leave, because it has a lot of emotion that he doesn't want to share right now. Later, Jesper returns to the post office and finds Margot waiting for him. He finally takes her to Alva so they can write her letter to Klaus in English. She wants a sled with a sail. Jesper brings the letter to Klaus home and starts to make it, but it looks very poor. Klaus eventually takes pity and helps him. Then, they bring the present to Margot's village and leave it outside her tent. This time, Jesper stays behind with Klaus and watches her unwrap and play with the sled with her parents. Back at the house, Klaus finally talks about his wife, Lydia. They moved away from the village because they wanted to start a family. While they waited, he is starting making toys. Sadly, they never had children, and Lydia died of an illness. He kept making birdhouses because of her love of birds. To show his joyfulness, Klaus thanks Jesper for bringing joy back into his life and decides to go forward with the Christmas plan, even though Jesper still wants to leave Smeerensburg, but can't tell to Klaus. In a moment, he is surprised to see the schoolhouse decorated for Christmas and Miss Alva transformed, using up all her savings. After that, Mr. Ellingbo and Mrs. Crumb break into the post office and find Jesper's chart of letters delivered. They begin making several fake letters and put them on Morgan's boat since he handles all the outgoing mail. Moreover, Margot brings her entire village to Klaus' workshop to help prepare for the big night. Jesper brings Alva to the workshop and starts to consider possibly settling down in Smeerensburg. Eventually, Christmas Eve arrived. The Sami village has remodeled Klaus's sleigh and gives Klaus a new red outfit. Later, the good mood is broken when Jesper's father arrives. Mr. Ellingbo and Mrs. Crumb invited him because over 14,000 letters have been delivered. Since he held up his end of the deal, he can go home now. Klaus and Alva are disappointed to learn about Jesper's real intentions. At the docks, Morgans tells Jesper's father that his son is the first postman to leave Smeerensburg unhappy, but Jesper tells his father the truth and is allowed to stay. On the mountain top, he notices the clans carrying torches toward Klaus' home. Eventually, the sleigh is loaded with presents. The clans arrive to destroy them. Once kids stop receiving toys, they'll eventually start fighting again, which will make the grown-ups fight again as well. Then, Jesper jumps on the sleigh and tries to make a getaway, but it's not connected, so the sleigh rolls downhill. The clans chase after them down the hillside. Moreover, Klaus refuses to help because he's still mad at Jesper. We notice that the bag is ripped, and toys begin to fall out. Jesper frantically apologizes while trying to close the bag. Mr. Crumb's gargantuan daughter, Pumpkin, almost falls to her death, but she's saved by Mrs. Ellingbo's son Olaf. However, Jesper stops the sleigh from going over the cliffside, but Mrs. Ellingbo rips the bag, causing presents to fall. After that, Mrs. Ellingbo insists that the town will always be miserable as long as they're in charge. Still, Jesper disagrees. A true act of goodwill always sparks another. To prove his point, Pumpkin and Olaf are not enemies anymore, and they discover that the presents on the sleigh are just firewood wrapped in wrapping paper. Luckily, the real presents were back at the workshop safely. Alva found out about the plan because the children told her about it at school, then she told Klaus. Later, officially forgiven, Jesper and Klaus depart to deliver the presents. Meanwhile, Christmas morning arrives, and the children eagerly open their presents. On a nearby hill, Jesper and Klaus sit and listen. In the end, life continues to improve in Smeerensburg. Pumpkin and Olaf get married, which makes Mr. Crumb and Mrs. Ellingbo in-laws. Jesper and Alva marry and later have 2 children. Klaus' present operation continues growing bigger and further. Jesper and Klaus remain friends until 12 years later when Klaus disappears to be with his wife. At a moment, Jesper gives love to his wife and children. Then, sits down in front of the fireplace by the Christmas tree. He hears the sound of sleigh bells and smiles, wanting to see his old friend again. So, that was all from the video. Subscribe to this channel to watch more content like this. Just to let you know, we are posting videos every day for you. Please subscribe to give us more motivation, and you will not miss our daily video.